Hello and welcome to the Fit to Transform podcast, where you learn how to train and diet effectively and, most importantly, how to maintain those results for life, once and for all. I'm Nikias Tomasiello, a transgender training and nutrition coach working online with anyone who's ready for a true lifestyle transformation, anywhere they may be in the world. As a friendly reminder, any and all information provided is for educational purposes only. You should consult with your doctor before implementing any changes to your diet and exercise program. With that disclaimer out of the way, thank you for being here. Now grab yourself a cup of tea or pre-workouts and enjoy. Yo, dear listeners, hello and welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for tuning in. As an introduction to this conversation, I wanted to explain to you that this is a very unique interview because it features a role-playing game. So you're going to hear me say things that you probably never thought I would say. And the reason for that is that I built up a persona for the purpose of the conversation. I pretended to be somebody else. I pretended to be somebody who, like I actually did have an eating disorder when they were a teenager, and now they are at a place in life where they no longer have the eating disorder, but they also don't have the physique that they want. And they feel really ashamed because they have been trying to lose weight, to get leaner, and they've not been able to. And they don't quite understand why they're not able to do that when they were able to maintain really unhealthy and obsessive behaviors in the past. So if anything, this should feel easier because they're trying to do it in a healthier way. They're trying to lose body fat in a healthier way now. And they are convinced that they need to be tough on themselves in order to achieve this goal. And they decided to hire Clara to help them become more consistent. So when you hear me talk about things that you never thought I would say, please understand that I'm trying to act, I'm trying to embody this kind of person so that Clara, with her excellent skills as a psychologist, can talk this kind of person through a journey of understanding how and why what they're doing hasn't been working, and how a compassionate based approach, which Clara and I both espouse in our work, respectively as psychologist and coach, can actually help make a positive difference that this type of person hasn't been able to see just yet. So please don't worry. I haven't gone insane. I haven't been lying to you this whole time. This is simply a role-playing game. It's a little bit like D&D. By now, you should know me. I love cosplay. I love acting. I love role-playing games. So I think I got a little bit too into the role. And by the end of the interview, I was like, I think I really need to record an intro to explain what's going on, because otherwise I believe that people will be really surprised to hear me talk in these terms. And on that note, I think that this was an amazing conversation, and I really hope that you enjoy it. And if you do, reach out and let me know what you thought of it, because I would love to know. Without further ado, let's start the interview with Clara Swedlund. Yo, dear listeners, hello and welcome back to the show. Today I have a returning guest, Clara Swedlund. Clara, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me again. It's so exciting to be here and to be chatting and catching up with you too.
Oh, I'm excited too because this podcast is going to be a little bit different, dear listeners, in that I want to play a bit of a role playing game with Clara, where I'm going to pretend to be Clara's client. And the last time we spoke, she suggested to me a compassion based approach to fitness. And I've been thinking about it, but I have some reservations. I'm not really ready to buy into this compassion bullshit. So I want to see what Clara is going to say as my coach in response to those reservations. But before we get there, Clara, are there any updates on you that you want to share since the last time that we spoke, which was over a year ago, as we were saying, when we weren't recording yet?
I know. Yeah, I guess like the main update for me is that since then I have officially qualified as a sport and exercise psychologist. So I'm now a chartered psychologist, and I'm in the process. I'm just waiting for my paperwork to be approved by the Healthcare Professions Council, which essentially means that I'm now part of the register that legally holds me accountable to the protected title of being a sport and exercise psychologist. So although not much has changed in how I work, um, I guess I've now got the stamp and the badge to kind of officiate and confirm that I am actually competent at what I do. But in terms of like how I view psychology and the psychology of fitness and the psychology of exercise and exercise and coaching, that has very much stayed the same, if not become even more grounded and embedded in these principles of compassion and acceptance. So I'm really excited to be able to actually have a genuine reflection and conversation with you about actually, well, why might someone feel the pushback against the compassion bullshit, as I did when I first learned about compassion? And actually, how can we think about compassion in a slightly different way that, maybe might not convince us straight away, but just offers a different way to think about these things?
I agree. I'm really looking forward to it. And congratulations, by the way.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. I know, it was like 4 and a bit years of a process that finally came to an end. I was like, whew. So it's nice. It's nice to be done with it. It's nice to not have any upcoming studies or anything, like any qualifications, any deadlines. Oh my gosh, I can't even explain to you how good it feels to just be done with higher education. Like, that is me. I am never going near it again. I will still do CPD, but I am never completing. I'll never need to complete another qualification ever again.
I'm glad that you've gotten to that point, if that's how you feel about it.
I'm just done with it. So I'm glad. It's 12 years in the making. So I'm like, okay, I'm fed up of education now.
Well, clearly, as your client, I have hired the right person then as your
Good.
pretend client for this show. And on that note, I'm going to descend into my fake client persona, and then we're going to get started.
Absolutely. Go for it.
So, coach, I hear what you said the last time we talked. You were talking to me about this compassion-based approach that you use. But
Mhm.
if that's okay with you, I need to tell you about certain things that I'm not sure about. Like I'm not totally ready to
Mhm.
start this process. I feel a bit
Okay. Yeah.
weird
Help me
about it.
understand that. Yeah. What's showing up for you? What are some of those reservations, or what have you been reflecting on?
So before I started working with you, I was following, I'm still following other coaches and fitness influencers, and they all have the kind of body, the kind of results that I want to get. And they say that you're not going to achieve the results like theirs or their clients if you're not tough on yourself
Mhm.
enough.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, when you hear that, well, what actually shows up for you when you see that they're saying like that you should be tough on yourself? What's that like for you to just hear?
It just makes sense based on everything that well, other areas of life, things I've heard from other people in other areas of life, that if you don't work hard enough, then you're not going to be successful. And if you don't, you know if you don't and not motivate yourself, but like if you don't tell yourself to stay focused and work hard, then it's not going to happen. You're just not going to do it.
Yeah, which is a really interesting reflection, actually, Nikias, because there is a lot of truth in that, actually. And, there is something to be said about being disciplined and showing up and displaying that for ourselves. I'm just kind of curious, you were saying about like being tough and how, according to these coaches, that's a necessary prerequisite to be able to achieve those results. Have you ever tried being tough on yourself before?
Yeah, a lot.
All right, talk me through that.
So, for example, if when I was going to school,
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to get high grades.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just tell myself, well, if you want to get high grades, you've got to study. So I would spend, my afternoon. In Italy, you go to school from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. In most
Mm-hmm.
cases, some schools are different, mine wasn't.
Yeah.
So it was 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Monday through to Saturday. So I would be in school all morning, and then after lunch I would basically spend all afternoon studying. This was when I
Mhm.
was in high school, especially because
Yeah.
that's when I cared about my grades the most to get into
Mhm.
university.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would tell myself. Well, it's what you
Mm.
gotta do in order to get the outcome that you want.
Yeah, and did it work?
So in school, yes, I got excellent grades. I was the best in my class all the time, to be honest.
Amazing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you're telling me that you've got experience where being tough on yourself has actually been really effective. It's helped you get the results that you wanted, right? You got the school grades that you wanted. Have you ever tried being tough in sort of a fitness context, like whether that be maybe with your training or with your nutrition or maybe both or any other aspects?
Yeah, when I was a teenager, I was overweight, and at some point I just didn't want to be overweight anymore.
Mhm.
And so I decided that I was going to become serious about losing weight. And in the process of doing that, I set myself certain rules, like what I could eat, how much I could eat, how often I needed to work out, and it became obsessive to the point where I was eating very, very little. I was
Mm.
eating a very small list of foods that were allowed, nothing else was allowed, and I would work out for a period of time. It was every day, 3 times a day.
Mhm.
It was only one summer because it would have been unsustainable with school. But then I
Yeah.
continued working out, and I was doing workouts that I didn't enjoy. I was just running all the time because I was afraid of. Well, at first I wanted to lose the weight, and once I've lost the weight, I kept doing it because I was afraid of regaining it, and
Yeah.
I I did not like work running. I did not like eating that little or saying no to all the foods I was saying no to. But I did it because I told myself that I had to if I wanted to maintain the results that I got.
Yeah, which is really tough. And I appreciate you sharing that with me because I'm hearing that you were just applying a logic that had worked for you before, right? If I work hard, if I'm tough on myself, I'll get the result that I want. But actually, I'm hearing that when you applied it to your initial, like, intentional weight loss attempt, that while it may have been effective, I'm making the assumption here that actually it did help you lose a significant portion of weight. That actually, although it was helpful to begin with, that then there was some kind of, unpleasant side effects that you were maybe struggling with, quite rigid food. What sounds to me like quite rigid food rules. And suddenly, I mean, you said that you didn't enjoy it. You didn't like saying no to food, and you didn't enjoy the workouts that you were doing. So, although being tough on yourself helped you lose weight, I'm hearing that I was actually quite an unpleasant experience for you.
Yes, I definitely lost weight. I think I lost about a third of my weight at the time. I did not need to lose that much weight. I ended up being underweight,
Mm,
and I was never diagnosed. But I, I exhibited all of the signs of anorexia nervosa and
right.
orthorexia nervosa as well, which is not
Mm,
technically in the DSM-5, but I believe that it exists as a disorder because I
mhm,
experienced it.
mhm,
And at the time, it seemed like being tough on myself was worth it because
right.
I was able to maintain that small body weight that I had. But if I had been so, and the maintenance of those results made me happy at the time. But in
Mm.
hindsight, I wasn't living a happy life. It felt like if that was the life I had to live in order to stick to those results, it was worth it. But if I hadn't been so keen on maintaining those results, I would not have wanted to live like that.
Right. So if we come back to the point where we started, where you said that actually all you're hearing from fitness coaches these days is that in order to achieve a particular physique, you have to be really harsh on yourself. Am I right in making the assumption that you want to achieve that particular physique, or is it that you've seen it and somehow you've been made to believe that that's something that you should aspire to do too?
Well, I mean, I like that kind of physique, so I do think that's what I want to achieve.
Hmm.
I also now that the eating disorder is behind me, I also want to achieve it and live a life that I'm happy about, that I'm happy with.
Mm.
I don't think that going back to that place where I was is worth that physique to me now.
Right. And what I'm hearing is that your mind is making the assumption that the only way to get to that physique is by being tough on yourself.
Well, it sounds like it because if it was one coach, then I'd be like, all right, maybe it's just you. But so many coaches have these amazing results themselves and their clients have these amazing results and they put out this narrative, and I just can't help but think, okay, well, I did get those. I mean, I did lose a third of my body weight, and I was in high school, so it's not like I was particularly skilled. I wasn't an athlete. I started out overweight and hating exercise, and I got
Mm,
myself to that point. And while it was unhealthy, like it was an unhealthy body weight, it was still a substantial amount of fat loss. So I'm thinking
mm,
now that I know that that would be unhealthy, I wouldn't quite take myself to that point, but it
mm.
still feels like if I'm not hard enough, well, I'm not even gonna get halfway there, even if, I don't want to get 100% of the weight there. But let's say
Yeah.
I want to get that kind of results, but to a healthier degree, it still feels like if I'm not gonna push myself, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, which I guess is a completely normal thing to think, given the fact that that was your experience. Like, it would be really weird, given your experience, right? Your current, I guess, your current experience of weight loss has been achieved through this really tough way. So, the way that I understand our human minds to work, well, we learn through experience. So, if the only way to achieve weight loss has been for you by being tough, for me, it would make complete and utter sense that you would assume that it was the being tough that facilitated the weight loss, and that was an integral part of that journey. And it's an interesting thing that you're sharing there, because of course, we see other people and we see coaches be in shape themselves, and we see the results that they post about their clients, and yet we're missing so much information about actually what that might be like for you. Because I guess, I mean, just as a challenge, we don't actually know this, but what's to say that these coaches and that their clients don't feel exactly the same way that you did when you were struggling with these rigid rules and with these rigid behaviors, and with this real lack of enjoyment of exercise, and saying no to foods that you maybe did actually want to eat.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I never thought about it that way because I'm assuming if somebody talks about it on social media and they're so happy about it, then they're happy about what they're doing.
Well, there's something to be said about how socially validating it is to achieve a particular physique, and how rewarding it can be externally. I just think it's important to be able to reflect on, actually, is is it a worth it for us, but also be like, why do we have to be miserable in moving towards something that matters to us, right? Like, because I'm hearing that maybe moving towards this physique and achieving this physique is something that you care about. When you set yourself out to, maybe get totally shredded, help me understand, like, where that goal comes from. Like, when you think about this and you go, okay, actually, this is what I want to achieve, how does that show up for you in your mind? Like, what are the sorts of thoughts that come up for you?
Um, can you rephrase the question? I'm not sure
Yeah.
how to answer it.
No, that's fine. So I guess what I'm wanting to know is, when you're sitting there reflecting, and maybe making or coming to the decision that okay, I want to change my physique, I want to achieve this transformation, like the transformations that these coaches are posting about. When that thought comes into your mind, what other thoughts follow through? Like, why do you want to do that? Where does it come from? How do you feel when you think about that goal? How do you feel about yourself, about your body? Help me understand that a bit more.
Oh, I feel ashamed because I'm not there yet, and it feels like for other people it's so much easier because obviously they're doing it and I'm not. It seems like for them it's easier to push themselves, whereas even if when I try to push myself, maybe I'll do it for a couple of weeks and then I'll just fall off.
Hmm.
Um, so I think mainly I'm ashamed of what I can't achieve, and I think, well, if only I could, if only I tried to be harder on myself and actually stuck to it, then I would get there and I would finally be satisfied with what I see in the mirror, and also I will have stuck to something and I will have shown up for myself that way.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that are kind of cropping up there for me. Um, like you said, you kind of feel ashamed of yourself now. I'm kind of curious, and sort of, that shame sounds like to me like it's wanting to instigate, or it's instigating the drive to change and to be tough on yourself. because then at least you'll be able to achieve the thing. Like, since recovering from, your disorder, your eating disorder, um, have you tried to lose weight by being tough on yourself? Like, is that a mindset that you've applied to yourself more recently?
Yeah, I have.
And how's that gone for you?
As I said, I would stick with it for a couple of weeks, and then I would just stop and go back to what I was doing before.
Right. So has being tough on yourself been effective?
Well, no, not really.
Right. So being would being tougher on yourself be effective given the fact that you've tried to be tough on yourself and it's not worked up until now?
Well, I mean, that was my assumption. Yeah, I just thought, well, I'm not pushing myself hard enough, clearly.
Actually, but what I'm hearing is that you are pushing yourself hard, right? You're because you're trying something, and then in spite of failure, in spite of multiple failures from what you're saying, you're trying again. To me, that shows me that you're trying really hard, actually, that you are being really resilient and showing up over and over. And it's just kind of making me wonder whether it's maybe not so much about you and your capacities, because you've told me that you have been able to show up and try these things and they've maybe have worked for you in the past. But it sounds like when you try to be tougher on yourself, or when you try to bring that mindset in, that it might work for a short period of time, but it doesn't work in the long term. So to me, that tells me that maybe the tough mindset isn't very effective as a long term strategy.
But then, if I'm not tough on myself, then I don't feel like I'm gonna be successful, because
Mm.
if when I wasn't being tough on myself in the past, it just felt like I let myself go because I stopped trying, and if I were to lose my discipline, or at least even when I'm not, even if I'm not achieving the physique that I want, I'm still at least staying where I'm at. Whereas, because I am pushing myself to at least keep that, and if I
Mhm.
don't keep doing that, then I feel like I'm just gonna let myself go completely and gain a ton of weight, and just spend
Mm.
all the time watching Netflix and chilling with chips in my, or popcorn or whatever, in my lap.
Yeah. And there's a couple of things there. So, for one, it doesn't surprise me that your mind is scared of letting go of being tough on yourself, because actually, like you said, it's worked for you in the past, right? When you were in school, it worked for you. You were really tough on yourself and you did really well. And then you applied that same mindset to weight loss and it worked. And it worked really well. So wouldn't it be weird if your mind was like, oh yeah, being tough doesn't work? Like, of course you're going to go to that. Of course you would use that because it's worked in the past. But the reality then is that it hasn't worked in the present, right?
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
not,
it
it was
hasn't.
effective then, but maybe now it's not as effective. It was maybe not effective as a long term strategy. At the same time, it doesn't surprise me that your mind is quite scared of letting go of it, because the risk, according to your mind, would be to go back to where you found yourself before. And when you were struggling with being overweight, I mean, what was that like for you? What was life like for you?
Yeah, I definitely don't want to go back there. Like, people made fun of me in school all the time. Um, that was the main thing for me. I think I really struggled with the feedback that I got, especially in middle school, between 11 and 13 years old.
Mm.
Uh, it, all of my peers, regardless of sex, would make fun of me. It was a period of time where really craved romance,
Mm.
and it I got a lot of refusals, because of that. Like, as in, I got reject not refusals, I got rejected a lot by other people, and that was really difficult. And then when I started losing weight, all of a sudden everybody was complimenting me, on the effort that I was putting in, and then in general they were complimenting the way that I looked. It just felt so much better, and so that's also what kept me in stuck in the eating disorder behaviors for so many years. I
Mm.
just was I the last thing I wanted, if it felt like if I had a piece of cake, then the next day I would wake up and be the person the overweight person that I'd left behind.
Yeah, completely. That's really tough, Nick, because it's, our minds work in these funny ways. It's not funny, but in these interesting ways, I guess, where genuinely just by virtue of evolution, we have evolved to essentially have this capacity to always, always, always try to protect ourselves. Think about this, like, our brains have evolved from a millennia and thousands of millions of years of animal iterations, right? And the reason why we have survived is because we have been selected naturally, although our ancestors that got selected were the ones who kind of were better safe than sorry, right? The ones that approached life with a better safe than sorry mindset. Think about it this way: if when we lived in caves, let's just imagine that you're chilling and you're watching the sky go by in a particularly nice corner of the jungle, and suddenly a beast comes up, a beast that could eat you, right? And you sort of hear the rustling in the leaves first. If your mind doesn't assume that danger is coming, and you stay there, well, you're toast, right? You're gone. So obviously, those ancestors didn't get to kind of evolve and pass on their genes further down the line, and it was the ones that assumed that any rustling of feather of leaves was danger that got the hell out of there, and essentially, like, that mindset persisted. So all that to say that our minds have always evolved in this particular way where we are attuned to danger, and our minds are always going to try to protect us. Not only that, but as humans, as a social species, so much of our survival throughout our ancestry has been based and reliant upon our social relationships. When we lived in caves, it was about 70 to 100 people kind of living in a commune, in a group. And in order for all of us to survive, well, we had to be socially attuned to one another, right? The social responsibilities were divided for food, like hunting, gathering, etc., as well as for protection. And so being accepted by the group was absolutely imperative to our survival. Because if for any reason we were ostracized, if for any reason we were isolated, well, the real risk to us was death. Because if we got rejected from the group, we might die as a result of the elements, we might be caught by a predator, or we might end up eating something that kills us because there's nobody else there to indicate that we shouldn't have that, right? That's why the group is so important to our survival. And so what that tells us is two things. One, that our minds are attuned to always protect, and our minds will always default to protection no matter what, even though we might not obviously nowadays be in acute danger. But also that one of the biggest threats that our mind always is trying to protect us from is social isolation, is ostracization from others. So what I'm hearing from you actually is that for you, losing weight was almost like something that helped you move away from that isolation and find connection. So according to your mind, the part of your mind that is concerned and responsible for protecting you, the risk of gaining weight or the risk of not being lean is death, right? Because it assumes, right, our brain doesn't understand that we're not going to die as a cause of the elements these days. But your mind assumes, because it has to, that if you change in a way that might make you more at risk or more likely to be socially ostracized based on things like your weight, which are things that, socially in the West at least, we discriminate people against, then it makes complete and utter sense that your mind essentially freaks out at the thought of you not applying discipline to yourself to lose weight, because the consequence of not doing that, according to your mind, for all it knows, is that you might be socially ostracized and therefore die, which sounds really dramatic, but that is just how quickly our mind works. So I guess it doesn't surprise me at all that your mind just gets really scared when you think about, well, if I'm not disciplined, what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is, your mind, all it knows is to protect you from that ostracization, right? So all it knows is to protect you from gaining weight. And it's going to assume by default that if you're not disciplined, that you will gain weight. Why? Because that's what you learned. When you were disciplined, you lost weight and you were socially accepted. So your mind makes that connection. Now, I'm not going to argue with your mind, because that's a perfectly logical argument. perfectly logical argument. I guess I'm just curious. Well, firstly, do you have any questions off the back of that? Because that was a TED talk from me, and I'm not really giving you the chance to think and talk there.
No, I understand. What's your question?
I guess my question is, given your life circumstances now and given the experiences that you've had with like health and food and nutrition and exercise, I mean, how likely is it that you would suddenly find yourself not willing to exercise at all, that you would find yourself, overeating to the point of being in a huge calorie surplus? Like, based on your experiences, how likely is that?
Not really likely.
Okay, not really likely. So what I'm hearing you say is that although your mind has that fear, that in actual practice, it's almost like maybe it's almost like freaking out. I say this very, very loosely, and I hope it doesn't seem shaming, but it's almost like it's freaking out over something that is actually not very likely to happen.
Yeah, I guess so, but I still don't have the results that I want, so
Yeah. So in this case, then obviously your mind is freaking out. Your mind is saying you must use discipline to get you to those results, right? And it's saying that's the only way that we know to do it. We're recognizing that maybe it's not fully correct. Maybe there is a different way to approach it, right? I guess what I want to know, right, is when you apply that tough discipline, um, does it feel pleasant?
no.
Okay. And when we feel forced to do things that are unpleasant, um, dumb question, are we more or less motivated to do them long term?
I guess less motivated.
Typically, we are less motivated, right? So, could there be a way where we can think of you moving towards these results, but from a place where you're being more motivating with yourself, you're being more encouraging of yourself?
I mean, yeah, that would be ideal because then I would stick to it.
Exactly, right? Exactly. Now, help me understand, what does it mean to you right now to be able to achieve that physique?
It would be like it would be proof that I can promise something to myself and I can see it through, and
Mm,
it would be finally living in the body that I envision for myself.
mm, I love that. So, proving something to yourself, seeing something through, being in the body that you sort of see yourself in. What is it like to be able to kind of say those things out loud? Like when you say that you would like those things to be real for you, what's that like?
Well, it makes me smile because
Mm,
it feels really important to me.
yeah, it feels really important to you. Would it be fair to say that that would be quite a kind thing to do for yourself?
Yeah, I don't like the word kind, but yeah, I guess that works.
What is it about the word that you don't like?
It just feels airy fairy, like compassionate. I don't like the word compassionate
Okay,
either.
you don't like the word
It's a
compassion.
kind of word that people use when they're making excuses for themselves and being lazy.
Right, okay. Really, really good point, actually. And I am going to challenge you a little bit on that because what you're telling me is that living in the body that you want and really pushing your physique that way actually would makes you smile. It would be something that's really important to you. So when you apply discipline and you consistently fail to show up in the way that you want to, well, how does that make you feel?
Oh, that's crap.
Yeah, 100%. So would it be fair to say that actually holding yourself accountable to do the things that matter would be helpful for you to move forward and actually achieve this physique that you want to achieve?
Yeah.
And what if I was to tell you that according to the definition of compassion, that's exactly what compassion is?
Then I would tell you that I don't think I understand what compassion means.
Okay, and that is totally fair. And I think compassion is so misunderstood because I would agree, right? The first time that I encountered the word compassion, the full body like revulsion like reaction that I had, it was so real. And this is genuinely 4 years ago when I came across, I was like, I love the idea of compassion for everybody else, not for me though. That sounds like bullshit. I don't want that. But genuinely, so compassion, it's got what we call like the two psychologies of compassion. The first part of compassion is acknowledging that something is difficult, distressing, or unpleasant for us, right? And I'm hearing that for you specifically, and do correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but I'm hearing that for you, not having the physique that you want, and or consistently uh coming under or not meeting your own expectations for yourself is something that you're experiencing as being difficult, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And in order to overcome that discomfort, what you've been doing is what you've always known to do, which is just apply more tough discipline. I just need to work harder, I just need to try harder, right?
Yes, exactly. And it actually frustrates me that apparently I could do it when I was 15 and now I can't do it anymore and I'm 29.
Yeah, exactly. And that is so normal because we go, well, what's wrong with me now? Why can I not do it? I could do it before. It's such a common frustration to have. So what compassion would tell us is that the first piece is to acknowledge that that is something difficult for you right now. But the second part of compassion is to do something about it. If you didn't address this real need that you've got within yourself to work on your physique and to show up and hold yourself accountable and do the work, and if you don't do that, well, that's not very kind, is it?
Yeah, I guess not.
No, like you owe it to yourself. If knowing that showing up for yourself and having the integrity of sticking to your word and being able to see the results through, if that's something that makes you smile, if that's something that's important to you, then I would argue that it's incredibly unkind to keep tripping yourself up and to keep
Yeah.
putting yourself in situations that make it really difficult for you to achieve that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I would say, in my language, I would say that actually would be a very compassionate thing to hold yourself accountable and to be regimented with yourself in showing up and doing the things that matter to you, because that's what's important for you.
So then how is that what you're describing different from what I was trying to do? Because you're not saying that I shouldn't be regimented. So I guess I'm confused because it
Mm,
seems like compassion then is the same thing as this tough love that these other people are talking about on social media.
I think there's a nuance to it, right? When we think about tough love and when we think about discipline and how that's put across on social media, oftentimes, and correct me if maybe this isn't your experience or this isn't what you've seen, but oftentimes the way that that is presented, it's a very at all costs mindset. It's a very what I would call a threat-based mindset. It's very punitive. You will do this or else. You will suffer. You're not good enough. You have to do it because you're not good enough. It kind of very much comes from this place of deficiency, of simply not meeting a standard. And
Yeah.
when that is the driving force, it's really unpleasant because we're constantly almost like in a state of tension when we're trying to do these things. And because it's so unpleasant and because we're in such a state of threat, well, inevitably, anytime that we do muck up, we feel 1,000 times worse. And we feel like we need to almost like double down on it. What I'm saying is, no, you're telling me that doing this stuff is really important to you, right? It's going to help you feel good. You want to do it because you are recognizing almost like implicitly, from what you're telling me, that you deserve to feel good about yourself. You deserve to feel good in your body.
Yeah.
And you deserve to validate yourself and your needs. So, actually, holding yourself accountable, but doing it from a place of, I deserve this, right? Very, very different. It might look the same, right? Behaviorally, you might still be showing up, you might still be, doing your gym sessions, you might still be tending to your nutrition in a way that you need to be tending to your nutrition in order to achieve that. But the place that that's coming from is very, very different. You're not doing it from a place of, I'm a disgusting piece of shit and if I don't do this, I'm going to be awful and fat. You're going, well, that's not who I am. But I deserve to feel good in my body. I deserve to see the physique that I envision for myself reflected in the mirror. I'd say it's unkind to not hold yourself accountable, to not show up and do the do. But you're doing it not because you feel like if you don't, you're shit, but because you recognize that you are worth it. You are worth that effort. And so you're going to have to hold yourself accountable. The difference then being that whenever you do encounter the mishaps of life, you're going to be much less likely to berate yourself for that. And you're going to be much more likely to essentially pick back up where you left off, often a lot quicker, because you're not busying yourself, calling yourself all sorts of names, punishing yourself, making yourself feel worse, and applying even more tough love, which you already told me hasn't been working for you as of late.
Yeah, that's true, but it also sounds easy to say, but like I've been feeling this bad about myself for so long. Like I can't just go out and be like, ah, it's so unkind, to treat myself this way. I deserve this. Like I don't really believe that.
Yeah. And that's an incredibly difficult thing to work on. I would completely agree that it's not, well, I might conceptually understand that this makes sense. Actually, working on that self worth is really, really difficult. Not maybe difficult. It's not necessarily difficult. It just takes time. When you've been in a headspace where you've not liked yourself, and when life has shown you that you're not a likable person, more often than not, that's how I tend to view things. Starting to develop that headspace is difficult. I will say that from personal experience, more often than not, one of the most important things to do there, which makes us often cringe, is essentially like lower our standards. Not actually lower our standards, but what often happens with this tough love, and with this tough love, super disciplined, go hard or go home, bro, type of people, is that we expect ourselves to do everything, right? We expect ourselves to tick every single box that there is to be ticked. Now, think of this, right? Every time you set yourself up to do everything and you keep falling short, that's going to slowly erode at your self-confidence, going to slowly erode at your self-worth, right? So inevitably, if you were already coming at this from a place of not feeling good enough, and you keep experiencing failure after failure after failure, your self-worth just massively goes down. So what we then need is for you to start seeing that you can follow through with what you said you were going to follow through with, right? The worst part about it is that what that means is not even some expectation, some adjustments in expectations. It's some adjustments in actually what are the things that we're expecting ourselves to do, right? So instead of maybe expecting yourself to go to the gym 6 days a week, for example, if that's what you were expecting yourself, actually expecting yourself to go to the gym 3 times a week. In order to be able to do that, as a psychologist, what we'll need to work on is developing your capacity to tolerate that discomfort and to be able to hold yourself when your mind is going, this isn't enough, you're going to fail, this is awful, like you need to do more, right? That's a skill that we need to develop, and that would be the skill that we would work on. But what we're going to have to do is lower the bar essentially so you can meet it. Because what I need you to do in order for you to build up your self-worth, in order for you to build up your own self-trust and your own self-confidence, you need experiences of meeting the bar. And if that means that the bar has to be lowered for you to meet it, then that means that the bar has to be lowered for you to meet it, right? And therefore, the skill that we will work on together is on helping you tolerate how fucking uncomfortable that's going to be for you. And that's fine. You're not going to like me very much, but that's okay. If you're willing to do the work, that's the work that we will do. Because once you start showing yourself that you can meet the bar, that's when you can start to build that trust in yourself again. Actually, I am someone that can meet the bar. I'm not someone who fails all the time. Because you'll be building your self-worth and your self-trust by doing that, by showing yourself that you can meet the bar, it means that we can then start to raise the bar every so often. And because in this process, we're working on you tolerating the discomfort of not feeling enough, gradually, not only are you building your self-worth by showing yourself that you can do the thing that you were going to do, but we're also going to be working on, internally, gradually letting that build and sort of teaching yourself that you've got your own back and that you're there to support yourself throughout this. As you start to meet the bar, you're going to realize that you're coming to the bar from a place of self-respect, that actually you owe it to yourself to meet yourself where you're at. And the more you do that, the more your confidence is going to grow in yourself, And the more you're going to want to continue to shop because you're going to start to notice how good it feels to do that. And I can guarantee that at no point are you going to be insulting yourself into meeting that bar, because that's not going to work. You've tried that before, right? Let's be real. If it had worked, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Therefore, given the fact that you've heard me out up until this point, I'm going to assume that you're going to give this a good shot and, cringe through the process, but maybe just trust that maybe there's a different way to do this, because that's not worked. I mean, you could go back to toxic discipline, fine, and we'd be having this conversation again in 6 months when you're frustrated, even 6 months more frustrated than you are now. So building that tolerance and building your own self-worth by lowering the bar, by getting comfortable with the lower bar, by meeting it, is how you would gradually then get to that point where you are able to show up and tick the boxes and do the do over time, to the point or to the extent that you would want to do them at.
Okay, that makes sense. I think I want to try that, because I think I just didn't understand what compassion was going to look like. Like you explained in a completely different way. Normally, people just make it sound like they're patting themselves on the back for uh, basically letting go of their standards, and they just leave it at that. Like they'll say, "Oh yeah, I missed the gym today," and but that's okay, and then they just miss the gym and they don't do anything about it. And so that's what I thought that it was going to look like. But you're right that what I'm doing now isn't working, and I don't know why I can't be the way that I was when I was younger. But well, if I can't do it, it's a kind of a moot point anyway, because obviously I've been trying and it's not happening. So I think you have convinced me, and I am going to breathe my real self back into myself, because acting for this long felt so weird. I'm going to have to record an introduction to really prepare people for what they're going to hear come out of my mouth, because after 5 minutes into the conversation, they're going to be like, Nick, what are you talking about? I watch your stories. You are as consistent as can be. You are so compassionate with yourself. You preach that to your clients. And I'm like, yes, you are right. This was all fake. This was acting. But it felt so strange, because I guess I was like, wow, is this what actors feel like when they are lying to people on TV or in theater?
100%. It's so interesting because, like, in like a huge part of how us as psychologists develop our skill set is through role play. And often when we're role playing an issue, we step into either previous versions of us, or we can try to think of how would I have thought about this in a previous lifetime. And obviously there was
Yes.
a view that I recognize and that we've discussed before. And it's funny because when we're in it, it's like, oh my gosh, like this would have been something that I would have said, and this is exactly how I would have felt about this. And obviously, we come to it now with a different understanding, and yet we can have compassion for the fact that we've been able to arrive at that. You've been able to arrive at this point of thinking through this work that you've done, but actually, had your experiences in some people haven't been any different, that thinking like that about compassion and being quite opposed to compassion would be the most logical and reasonable way to be thinking about it. It's just given
Yeah.
your experience, right? Like, and this is the thing I always say to clients, like, everything makes sense in context, and compassion is flipping hard, and not just the toxic fitness industry, but like the society that we live in just doesn't favor compassion. It's not convenient to capitalism, nor to the patriarchy, etc., to have compassion in there. So, like, of course we're going to have so many reservations about it because it's so unfamiliar, it's so foreign to us, and that's okay. We can have compassion for that too.
To your point of how everything makes sense in context, and you can create perfectly logical arguments for yourself not to embrace a compassionate approach. I think the way I approach the persona that I embodied in this interview just speaks to the fact that this is true, that everything does make sense in context. Because the way I was thinking about it was, what would I have been like if I had not encountered, like if I have not espoused the compassionate approach I used to coaching, if I had not been a coach at all, if I had just gone down a different route away from fitness, and I had recovered from the eating disorder, but still wanted to, but then through as part of that process, what if life had taken me into a different direction? I had
Yeah.
regained weight and I had gotten away from the kind of physique that I would want,
Mm.
and I didn't have the skills I have now. Basically, if I had been a completely different person, I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
So I started with my own experience. What
Yeah.
would have happened if, in a different life, I had gained weight? I did feel unhealthy. I did feel ashamed of myself, and
Mm.
I was thinking to myself, at least when I had an eating disorder, I was able to stick to the goals that I had. So that
Yeah.
was one part of it. And the other part of it was I was thinking to about all of the clients that I've spoken to, or even non-clients, people I've spoken to over the years,
Mm.
what they struggle with, what comes up for them
Mm.
when they are trying to achieve results and they cannot do it.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that that everything makes sense in context, that I agree with you, is that I had an outline for this podcast, but
Mm.
I didn't have a persona. I built the persona as we went along.
Yeah.
And our brain is very logical. So if I was able to build that persona with no real acting skills, I'm not a trained actor. I just did it based off of these two main sources of inspiration.
Mm.
If I was able to do that, it is because the thought process behind these lines of reasoning is logical. I don't know if that makes sense to you, Clara.
100%. Yeah, no, it makes complete and utter sense, and I think it's exactly that. And I think, again, as coaches, and probably the people who might listen to this podcast aren't necessarily the ones that have to hear it, but we could really all do with being able to remember that even when we do, or when clients of our coaches, when people behave in ways that at the surface don't appear to make a lot of sense. And I say this, for example, like I specialize in working with people who sort of self-sabotage and are very black and white and very all or nothing with their health and fitness. um, while people might do things that on the surface don't appear to make sense, that actually the only reason they don't make sense is because we don't have enough context, right? The minute that we start looking into it, everything makes sense. There's always a very clear purpose as to why we might not want it. In this case, why you didn't want to be compassionate, because compassion, or being very harsh on yourself, was protective. It was protecting you from ostracization. It was protecting you from the fear of gaining weight, and it was keeping you safe because it was keeping you likable. And you know by that, through that social capital of our bodies, it was keeping you, yeah, just in it with people. It was reducing the risk of you being ostracized. And like, that's the most logical and most sensible thing to be doing, because that's exactly what we've evolved to do. So how else is one supposed to think? It's an inevitability. Of course, in the short term, it might be helpful, but in the long term, it comes at a great cost. Hence why compassion is such a helpful approach to bring into it, and to recognize that the kindest thing to do is still, if these things matter to us, but the kindest thing to do is to show up and do the work. But there's a way, and there's a way. We don't have to be dickheads to ourselves, in the attempt or in the pursuit of health and fitness. And it's so much more pleasant and so much more sustainable when we do it from a place of just not being assholes. I'll put it that way.
And I really wanted to stress the point that it is logical and that it is sensible, because in this role playing scenario, I came to you, I already decided that you were going to be my coach. But
Mm.
sometimes when we're stuck in a place where we feel like the way that we think uh, isn't logical and it isn't
Mm.
sensible, that makes us even more ashamed, to the point where
Completely.
we wouldn't ask for help because we're thinking that we don't deserve help, for the
Mm.
reason that it wouldn't make sense to the other person
Yeah.
why we're engaging in those thoughts or those behaviors. So that's why I thought it was important that we both emphasized how, yeah, having thinking about it this way, even if you keeping basically, so there's that saying that doing the same thing over and over is a definition of stupidity.
Yeah.
If you really embrace that, that's going to make you feel really ashamed of the fact that you're pursuing this goal in the exact same way over and over again. It keeps not working and you keep doing it. You're going to feel
Mm.
stupid, right? And so that's going to make you less likely to reach out to someone like you, Clara, for
Mhm.
coaching or and therapy and or
Mhm.
therapy, or somebody like myself who has compassionate-based approach to fitness
Yeah,
because you feel like you're an idiot. So why would you want a coach to tell you what you already know, which is that you are an idiot?
exactly.
So, and I think that it was important in this conversation to emphasize that you're not being an idiot, and it makes perfect sense that you would come at it from that perspective, given
Mhm.
the background that you had and the experience that you had.
Yeah, exactly that, exactly that. And it's good that whoever gets to hear this gets to hear that. And just as a gentle reminder that like this stuff is hard. Like compassion, it's difficult. It makes sense, it's logical, but like it's hard. And working on this in a therapeutic setting, it's challenging, and it's so worth it, but it doesn't make it any less challenging than it is. And that is okay. Everyone has the capacity for compassion. I am certain of it. Or 99.99% of people, I think, have the capacity for compassion. And so, even if it feels totally foreign, and like, even though you might think it's impossible for you, like, you're not that different. Like, you're not that unique that you don't have the ability to be compassionate with yourself. It's just learning and practicing. That's all it really is.
Absolutely. And in fact, whoever's listening to this podcast, if you decide to embrace a compassion-based approach, because it is hard, pat yourself on the back. Because it is fucking hard, and you're being very brave and you're being very strong in deciding to go
Mm,
against the grain. Because the reason it's hard is that the opposite of compassion, the tough love approach that we argued against, is what everybody's doing. And if everybody's doing it, then it makes us feel like it's easier because it's what we're used to. You're stepping out of your comfort zone if you choose to be compassionate. So big up, pat yourself on the back for real.
100%. Like, yeah, I would repeat that, but I'm not going to add more words to it because I agree with everything you just said there.
In that case, I think we've come to an excellent place to end the podcast, Clara. I wanted to thank you again for role playing with me. And I wanted to ask if there's anything that we've been discussing that you'd like to expand on, or any final message for the listeners.
Nothing to expand on, but if anyone does want to learn more about compassion and or follow another account as well as your own of like a compassion based approach to fitness, then by all means do feel free to follow me. My Instagram is Clara underscore the exercise, and I regularly write emails and offer webinars and courses and resources to be able to support people with the development of a more compassionate mindset to health and fitness. So any questions, if there's anything that you're not sure about, and or if you want to have the same discussion that Nick and I had together, but in real life, and genuinely just unpack whatever's there for you, whatever reservations you might have, just feel free to message me. This is exactly what I do day in, day out. But no, thank you so much to you again, Nick, for having me, and it's been a great brain stimulating discussion, hopefully for you too, even though you were role playing.
Oh, it definitely was. It was interesting, and I think because I never tried to role play as the person that I usually coach, it
Yeah.
gave me a different perspective to meet my clients with when I face them. So it helped me grow as a coach in a way. I'm really thankful to you for sharing your skills with me, given that I don't have the kind of training that you have. I was going to ask if you had anything that you wanted to plug to the audience, but you already did. So I'm going to put the link to
Oh,
your
thank you.
Instagram in the show notes. Great minds think alike, Clara. And
Exactly that.
on that note, I wish you a great rest of your day, Clara.
Thank
I
you so
am
much.
very thankful, dear listeners, for you to have chosen to stop by and give this episode a listen. If you want to reach out to me or to Clara, or the links will be in the show notes. And with that said, I will talk to you next time. Lastly, if you want to support the podcast and help me reach more people, please leave a 5-star rating or review on any podcast platform that you're using. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.